Management Award. Widely recognized as a leading voice on social justice and inclusive development in India, Professor Thora continues to contribute to scholarship and policy discourse. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Am I sufficiently audible?
Yes, sir.
Well, good afternoon to all of you for this very useful symposium of one day where we are discussing the thoughts and views of Dr. Lalmani Joshi on his entire work. So my encounter with Lalmani Joshi is very different. I am an economist and I only read religious studies, religious book. So I am a reader, but I haven't written anything on religion as such, not even on Buddhism. My encounter with Lalmani Joshi came through a different channel. This was my search to understand the present revival of Brahmanism that is going on, particularly after 2014. And there are certain features of that revival of Brahmanism which are very visible, and to understand those features, to understand the meaning of those emerging trade, religious trade, I was concerned about some of them. One of them was that Hinduization of the state, the directive suggesting Hindu religion as the foundation of the Indian constitution or the state, and that has become very vocal in a later period. In fact, very recently, the RSS chief has said that there is no need of putting the Hindu word in the preamble of the constitution. The constitution is already Hindu. It is just like shining. You cannot say the sun is sunshine, sun is still be shining. So it is this question that troubled me, but there are other questions which I will take later on. Now it so happened that I discussed this issue with the chairman of the present session, Lokamitra, and I asked him that I am really worried that on the name of Hinduism, what is being propagated is Brahmanism. And then he suggested me that there is a very excellent essay based on the lecture given by Lalmani Joshi in Sri Lanka, that is Brahmanism, Buddhism and Hinduism. And that essay apparently seems to bring out a clarity as to what Brahmanism stands for, what Buddhism stands for, and how Hinduism is different from these two. And that made a beginning, and I read it and I was so impressed by this, about the clarity of the differences between this religious system. So much so that I asked Vimal Kirti, Bhikkhu monk from Pune, I don't know whether he is available here, to translate that book, Buddhism, Brahmanism and Hinduism into Marathi, which he did. It is during that time he suggested me that we will require a permission of the author's relative. And that is how I then encountered with Maya Joshi and her brother who is in Bombay. We sought their permission and the book was translated into Marathi. He gave a title, Agala Vegla Buddha. And it is in that process that I also met Maya Joshi. When I went to Delhi, I sought an appointment with her and we had a very interesting discussion. And then she suggested that she is having almost 12 to 13 essays which are lying with her, which have not been yet published. So I asked her that I would help her. So she passed on those essays to me, and it was in bad shape language-wise and otherwise, so we converted into some sort of a draft given to her, and she is going to publish it, sooner the better. So there are 12 essays which are published. Now, and when in this process I met Mahesh Devesh, and I suggested him, why don't we have this, because by that time I had read a couple of books, Studies in Culture, Buddhist Culture, Descending Buddha, the Brahmanism, Buddhism and Hinduism and some other essays, and I was very impressed that there is something dramatically new in his writing. And therefore I suggested Mahesh to organize a conference, and I'm so happy that he has been successful in bringing us all together. He probably got some funding from somewhere. My apology is that I am not able to join. Personally, I was very keen to come there, but simply because of my health reason, I decided to join online. Well, this is the background of my encounter with Lalmani Joshi. The issue that I was concerned with and bothered and then tried to seek answers in the writing of Joshi's are there are three, four issues. This issue is that in the current discussion going on in the adoption of Brahminization, is that Buddhism is an extension of Hinduism, or an ideology of reform of Vaidism or Vedic Brahmanism. It is not an independent or standalone thought, but a part of Vedic tradition. This has been constantly said by many, and to the extent that they are repeating the Buddha as the Vishnu's Avtara, which was mentioned in the Vishnu Purana, Vishnu Kuti in the AD 300. This is the first question that is being circulated and discussed and propagated in favor of Brahminism. Then the second question, of course, was the Brahminism is being proposed on the name of Hinduism. Underneath, although it is said that Hinduization of state, but basically what is being proposed is Brahminization. Now there is a need then to understand what is Hinduism and what is Brahminization. Now Hinduism differs from Brahminization. And I did not get much help. There is an excellent essay by Dr. Ambedkar in his Marathi magazine called Muknahet, which he has started a paper. He said that he took a position which is similar to that of Lalmani Joshi to some extent. He said that what is the religion of Hindu society? And he said that the religion of Hindu society is Brahminism. But he did not went into greater detail as to what are the features of Hinduism and how it is different from Brahminism. And Lalmani Joshi brought out a lot of clarity in that Brahminism, Buddhism and Hinduism essay and elsewhere also. So therefore, this is a question which I will discuss with you. The second is, of course, the decline of Buddhism and the reason for this Buddhism, which has come in extensive discussion and which Lalmani Joshi has a separate chapter in Descending Buddhism. Also, I think his original book, he refers to the reason of decline. Third issue is, or fourth issue is the use of violence. One of the reasons for the elimination of Buddhism is the use of violence, and Lalmani Joshi has gone into greater detail. It's not that he just mentioned it. There is in fact chapter also, the section also, austerity of Brahminism towards Buddhism and what are the different forms of austerity and how that has resulted into elimination of Buddhism altogether. And the last thing I discovered is that when there is a move towards Brahminization, there is also, it is associated with the proliferation of Hindu temple, rituals, and also emergence of several sadhus. Now there is a lot in the Lalmani Joshi's writing about this, and so I will like to share with you. In fact, the 12 papers which Maya Joshi had, which he is going to bring out in a book. One of the essays is on is a very important essay, which is on Siddhi. The exact title. I will give you the exact title later on, but it is a detailed essay which examines the tradition of Siddhi and Yogi and those who achieve that achievement and why there is a proliferation, and some of them are how debauchery that we have seen. So these are the 4 or 5 questions I was confronted with in the present context, and I thought that Lalmani Joshi in fact helped us to understand the contemporary reality. The religious discussion as was done earlier by the earlier speaker on different aspects of Buddhism that goes on. But in a contemporary reality, I thought Lalmani Joshi is a lot more relevant, and I got a lot of insight which helped me to explain the emerging trend of what is happening. Now, let me take one by one. I think, as I said, I am not a student of religion and neither I have written on religion. Therefore, I will base my argument on these four writings of Lalabani Joshi. One is, of course, Studies in the Buddhist Culture of India. First edition came in 1967 and second came in 1977, the revised edition. Then you have Brahmanism, Buddhism and Hinduism, lecture delivered in Sri Lanka in 1973, published in 73. And then, of course, we have Descending Buddha in 1983 and the theme of this Buddhism and Brahmanism and Hinduism and other also appear in some of his articles. I have one of these, that Religion and Society in Indian Civilization. This was a lecture delivered at Amherst College, Massachusetts University, US, in 1980, as late as 1980. So he is also improving his position, which is there in the Buddha and Brahmanism and Buddhism, and restating and, in fact, refining his argument about the difference between Buddhism, Brahmanism, and Hinduism. So these are some of the literature that I have been not quote, but my views are based on this. Now let me then go to the first point. That is how the fourth point I think discussion. The present view that comes from many of them is that Buddhism is not independent thought or religion. It is an extension of Hinduism, or it is a protest against Hinduism and that kind of thing. And how far it is correct and what is the view of the argument? Dr. Ambedkar said that Buddhism, of course, is an independent religion thought, and Buddhism is a clear testimony of that, although he makes a comparison with other thought. Now, the Lalabani Joshi, Brahmanism, Buddhism, and Hinduism, he takes this particular point. Those who argue that Buddhism is not a standalone ideology of religious ideology, he took a stock of all this argument, and many of you, some of the speakers have mentioned about it. He also took Karl Marx and what his thoughts on religion and Buddhism. He also took Rabindranath Tagore's view on Buddhism, supporting supporting the argument of others that Buddhism is the extension of Brahmanism, or a protest or an effort to reform Brahmanism. But he rejected both. But he has seriously then discussed with Radhakrishna and Kanye. Now Radhakrishna had said, and I would like to quote before you. This is from the, there was a book brought out on the occasion of 500th centenary of Buddha, and Radhakrishna had also given a lecture on the All India Radio, which Lalabani Joshi has quoted. Radhakrishna said Buddha was restating with a new emphasis ancient ideal of the Indo-Aryan civilization. Buddha did not start a new and independent religion. It was an offshoot of more recent faith and then he used a not very decent word, that it was schemism and hearsay. So this was the criticism of view of Radhakrishna. Then Lalabani Joshi goes and quote Kanye. Buddha was only a reformer of Hindu religion as practiced in his. So these were very eminent scholars of religious philosophy and history of religious philosophy, which Dr. Joshi has dealt in a thorough manner. And he has left no doubt that how their arguments are incorrect and malicious. Dr. Joshi has in fact, what is the uniqueness of Joshi is that similar view have been expressed by Dr. Ambedkar, but the uniqueness of Joshi is that by drawing the literary evidence and archaeological evidence and quoting them, he has rejected thoroughly the views of Radhakrishna and Kanye. Now, I don't have time, but I will only summarize. I can take in answer that question. Lalmani Joshi just refuted both this argument by saying, by going into the history of Buddhism till the pre-Vedic period and even pre-Aryan period. And he come to the conclusion is that he says that Buddhism has no non-Vedic, non-Aryan origin. It is an independent stream of ideology or thought which has been parallelly developed. It has no origin in non-Vedic or non-Aryan. Vedic Brahmanism's two main principles is sacrifice and ritual and Varna system. Buddha opposed both very, very critically by beginning. And then he comes that if it is an independent ideological thought, not connected with Vedism or other streams, he says that it has, however, linkages with the sermons. And he has given in greater detail, I think one of the most important contribution of Lalmani Joshi on which there has to be research is that he elaborated the concept of pre-Buddhist ideology similar to him, that is Sramanism. And at several places, at Descending Buddha as well as in other books, but also the latest article here, try to elaborate Sramanism, drawing archaeological evidence from the Mohenjo-daro and others. And he has given that before Buddha there were at least some 6 Sramanas, persons who hold the ideology which was opposite to Vedism. Now Vedism believed in sacrifice and ritual and the Varna system. The Sramanis were the Munis and the Munis who were ascetic and not attached to material attachment and disregard the Varna system. So there was a parallel opposition to the Vedism and Vedic Brahmanism by the Sramanas in various forms. One of the features of the Vedic Brahmanism was the household economy, more son, more progeny, and material consumption. This was the role of the Brahmanism to which these Sramanas opposed. They lived a house and they were not materialistic and they were not consumer. They believed in a goal of non-attachment as such. And therefore, they also were opposed to the private property, which Buddha eventually later on through Manu, through the Bhakti, the Kusanga, where he rejected the private property. So now, the important point that I would like to make briefly is that the Buddha, if at all it has historical tradition, pre-Buddhist tradition, it is the Sramanas who were also opposed to the Vedic Brahmanism. Therefore, to argue that the Buddhism is a sort of extension or a part of Vedic Brahmanism is utterly useless argument. And there are other, then Lalmani Joshi goes that the Vedic literature did not have any traces of eightfold path, Arya-Ashtangik mark, or karma based on present effort, or asceticism, non-attachment. Brahmanism is based on the material attachment and maintenance of progeny. And so the anti-materialism, non-sacrifices, non-attachment to material consumption and greed was the features of the Sramanas. And Buddha really is in that line. He has interpreted, Lalmani Joshi has interpreted the word Tathagata. Tathagata means arriving. And arriving means from that tradition of Sramanism. So I think I will only mention very clearly that interpretation may differ of Tantraism, of Mahayana or Jnanaism, but the position that Lalmani Joshi takes is very, very clear that Buddhism, and repeatedly he has said in Buddhism, Brahmanism, Buddhism and Hinduism in that lecture, repeatedly he has said that Buddhism is a stand-alone ideology, it's a creation of his mind, it's a creation of his scholarship. So that has to be absolutely clear. The interpretation may vary of very different text. Now let me come to the other point, is is the decline of Buddhism. I think we have to do a justice, and earlier speakers have not done as much justice to the decline of Buddhism in terms of bringing the Lalmani Joshi's view. We have to do that. It's an amazing explanation. I think if you look at the decline of Buddhism and the reason behind that, in both dissenting Buddha and others, he developed it. He had his own explanation, and he used a very important word that Buddhism had declined both by pain and by sword. By pain, he means that there was an academic assault on Buddhism continuously, and by sword means that Buddhism was eliminated with the use of terrible force. And the elimination of viharas, the elimination of institution, the elimination of literature. I will read his quotation. Now, but at the same time, his reasons are twofold. One is, of course, the condemning and rejecting the Buddhism by Kumarila, by Shankaracharya, and by others. Another writer also, so academic, and maybe including Vivekananda. Vivekananda is a very the person who is keeping he is praising Buddhism as well as denying Buddhism. And I think Lalmani Joshi has gone to the depth, and she has given the reason very nicely that Vivekananda was criticized by crossing the ocean and went to Chicago and give that famous lecture. But when he came back, when there was a reception, the High Court judge of the Bengal at that time refused to come. And similarly, when he died, some of the very eminent Brahmin scholars did not participate. The reason was that he was also praising Buddhism quite a lot. But because of this criticism, and he was from Kayastha community, Vivekananda was not a Brahmin. Lalmani Joshi has given that. So he was in a sort of he presented both views, but ultimately it has been accepted by BJP and company simply because he believed in soul, he believed in karma theory based on soul, he believed in God, he believed to a certain ritual. While he is writing making interpretation of Buddhism, he also praised Buddhism. And I think nobody has examined Vivekananda as clearly as Lalmani Joshi, catching him up, pointing out his good comment on Buddhism, but also catching him up as to how he is also criticizing Buddhism. Anyway, I think there are two reasons that Lalmani Joshi has given, which need to be studied as a matter of fact. We have not read one. And that is, he has given one of the things the decline was, a strategy was accepted, and that was assimilation and accommodation. He used this word, assimilation and accommodation. And what is assimilation and accommodation? Assimilation and accommodation is that, this view is also taken by Dr. Ambedkar. But Dr. Ambedkar did not elaborate too much, but Lalmani Joshi has elaborated it quite a lot. But Ambedkar also has discusses in somewhat detail in the riddle of Hinduism. There are two riddles which talks about this point, and I will briefly say. The accommodation that has been made by the Brahmanism to accept some of the Buddhist principles, and the intention was not honesty about those principles. The intention was that the population which has accepted Buddhism, these should come back, so that you develop certain adopt some principle of Buddhism, and you don't find the difference between the two, so it is easy to bring back the people. Now, what are those imitations that the Brahmanism has done? I am putting it by name only. First is Buddhist Hindu temple. There was no concept of Hindu temple. They borrowed it from Buddhist vihara, the concept of Buddhist monasteries. Even the Christianity, the Lalmani Joshi say that even Christianity has borrowed the concept of the monastery. Shankaracharya is the one who has coined the matha, concept of matha. It was directly taken from Buddha. Then images. The image of Buddha came much later, but they took those images, Buddhists developed images for remembrance and reverence, but the Brahmanism distort it and use it for the rituals and prayers and God, making it God. Then the concept of sannyasa. There is no concept of sannyasa and muni in Vedic Brahmanism. Lalmani Joshi has very clearly said. But they borrowed it and took it. They brought the concept of sannyasa, but as a fourth ashrama. you marry, you have children, and everything, and then you can go to the jungle. Now there is an excellent essay by Dr. Ambedkar on ashramas. How come fourth ashrama has come? So the concept of sannyasa has been accepted in a modified manner that at the end of your life, when you are married, you have children, you have progeny and everything, you can take a sannyasa. So the reason why sannyasa comes at the end, the reason is that you retain the household characteristics of Brahmanism, because household is very important in Brahmanism. From private property, household, material gain is very, so that is maintained, that I marry, I develop my progeny, I have a material development, and then I go to the forest. So this is another adoption. But again, Dr. Ambedkar also says that sannyasa concept was accepted simply because people were attracted towards it. Many thousands and lakhs of them were becoming monks. So people were accepting it, therefore Brahmanism took that concept in a modified form so that people don't find a difference. The difference will be blurred. Then comes the concept of non-violence. Vaidism is based on violence. In the rituals, in the sacrifice, cows and animals were killed. And violence was also justified for other reasons. And as a result of that, many people attracted. People attracted to Buddhism. So therefore, the Lalmani Joshi and even Dr. Ambedkar also say that they adopted the concept of non-violence. And adopted the concept of non-violence to the extent that they converted into a vegetarianism. And then they will allege the Buddhists that Buddhists continue to eat the meat, although they talk about non-violence. So the ideology of non-violence and vegetarian was accepted with the Brahmanism not for its sincerity, that they believe in that principle, but simply because they wanted to have the same principle so that people do not find difference between the two and they can attract those who are converted to Buddhism. So this is how, and then cow was taken to the height. Cow killing was stopped by the Buddha kingdom in 400 AD, I think, and now the cow killing is banned, but in Maharashtra and elsewhere, cow has been combined with Brahmins. Shivaji, protector of cow and protector of the Brahmin. Gau Brahman Pratipalak. That is the king, that's the image of the king. So you can see that there is no love for cow, but basically what is the Brahmin rights and Brahmin materialism. Then there are other things, I don't have a time to say that the concept of tirtha, going into procession and going to the temple now. In Maharashtra you have Vasaris and others go. Originally it was, the tirtha was the place where the animal would sacrifice. That is what Lalmani Joshi has proved. But later on, because of the impact of Buddhism, violence was stopped. But the tradition of tirtha continues. So now this is one thing, this is the practices I am talking about, but Lalmani Joshi, very important is that how Brahmanism adopted certain of the ideology of Buddhism and try to reform it. That's why he called it New Buddhism, New Brahmanism at times, or sometimes he used the word Reform Buddhism. Now he has discussed, I don't have time at all, he has discussed Gita, he has discussed Vedanta, he has discussed other literature which embedded in itself the Buddhist ideology, and therefore he benefit out of it. And the reform sort of Brahmanism was evolved over here. Now this is the strategy of assimilation and accommodation which has been used by the Brahmanic thinker, but the purpose was not to believe in those things. Now I would like to read out Lalmani Joshi's quotation. No less than person like Sarvapalli Radhakrishna and Vivekananda recognized his strategy. Sarvapalli Radhakrishna mentioned that, and please listen to it, Brahmanism has killed Buddhism in a fraternal embrace. Fraternal embrace. Swami Vivekananda held the view and said that Hinduism threw away Buddhism after taking its cap. Now you can see that they have taken the gist of the Buddhism but throw it away. So this strategy of assimilation and accommodation was used, and this carried into medieval period also. Now, Lalbani Joshi has given, and Dr. Ambedkar also sometimes mentioned, is that there is a reform movement in medieval period, the Bhakti movement, the Muslim Bhakti movement, Mir Khushro and others. Then come Namdev in 13th century, then Tukaram, then there are several of them in Maharashtra, Gadge Maharaj, Tukloji Maharaj, and you have Meera, you have the same Achyutananda. These were all reformers. Now what has been done then? They follow a strategy, same strategy, that they all of them were converted to God and constructed their temple. If you go to Delhi on Lodi Road, there is a temple of Namdeva. If you go to Amravati, where Gadge Maharaj was born, there is a temple of Gadge Maharaj. There is a temple of Tukaram. There is a temple of Eknatha. So all were converted into God, and the praise was started. And ritual was performed. Gadge Maharaj, Tukaram, all were opposed to the concept of God, and all were opposed to the rituals and others. But the Brahmanical, scholarship, very ingenious scholarship, convert them into God and rituals. So this was also the same process of adoption and assimilation, but to suit the interest of Brahmanism. So I think the Lalbani Joshi had mentioned about that. Now, and this is not only the saint from India, they are saint from Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Periyar, Narayan Guru, Adi Dravida movement. These all movement. Kabir is a god now, and there is a temple about Kabir. Ravidas, Achyutananda, Meera's teaching is forgotten. Achyutananda's teaching is forgotten. Ravidas' teaching is forgotten, but they are converted to God and rituals. So complete Brahmanization of the progressive Bhakti poet. So that is the movement that has been done. Now this is one strategy. The second strategy, of course, is the violence. And I think we are not doing justice to Lalbani Joshi as much as we should do about his view on violence. I have read it carefully. Let me read for you one or two paragraphs, and that will give you an idea. Evidence I will give later on. Lalbani Joshi writes, there is evidence of Brahmanical Hindu intolerance of hostility towards Buddhism and other non-Vedic traditions. Most of the extant Buddhist images in Indian museums are damaged and mutilated because of human vandalism. And not all this vandalism can be attributed to Muslim invasion or accident. No, they are attributed to Brahmins. Of thousands of Buddhist texts in several Indian languages, not more than 4 have survived in India. Removal of literature. And that's why the Buddhist monks ran away to the Nepal and Tibet, and thereafter they went to China, and from there to Korea and Japan. This is all because of the violence by the Brahmins. Brahmanical occupation of Buddhist shrine, Joshi's writing, also suggests persecution and violence. Typical orthodox Brahmanical attitude to Buddhism is reflected in the following statement made in the sacred book of Hindu. And I read it, this is Lalbani Joshi's quotation. Brahma who enters a Buddhist temple even in a great calamity, Brahman who enters a Buddhist temple even in a great calamity cannot get rid of sin by hundreds of inspirations, since the Buddhists are heretics and critics of Veda. Now, the Govani Varadi, to which the reference has been made earlier, has a separate independent book on, and his title of the book is Hardship and Downfall of Buddhism in India. He has given an entire account of violence, but I am not taking that into account. I am confining to Joshi. Now, in that chapter on violence, there is a separate section that Joshi has added, and that is Brahmanical austerity towards Buddhism is one of the reasons for decline of Buddhism. Now, I quote, academic and violence. Kumarila Sankaracharya Shankara is known to have founded his Srinavli Math. The concept of Math, which was borrowed from the Viharas of Buddha, the first Math was established by Sri Shankaracharya. And here Joshi says, Shankara is known to have founded his Srinavli Math on the site of the Buddhist monastery. This is the nature of violence. If currently I see, listen to the various Shankaracharya, if they are opposing to the Buddhism, uh, there are Shankaracharyas who say that the constitution has a provision against untouchability. Constitution should be what? Manusmriti, the roots lie here. Their forefather, their original guru, was against Buddhism, was involved in destruction of the Vihara and set up the mutt on the one of the monasteries. The Ambedkar also said that the adoption, I should have said this earlier, that Buddhism also has declined partly because of Shivaism and Vaishnavism. They also involved violence, but they also adopted several principles of Buddhism. Now, there is a subtitle, Royal Persecution, the King. Now, there is a total description, and it is so rich a kind of a violence. Here, I don't have a time. He has mentioned three kings. Lalmani Joshi has given three kings. One is Mayakula, who was Shivite. Then, of course, Shashanka and Purushpeta Shunga, which is known. They have done so much of violence against the Buddhists that there is no limit of it. Lalmani Joshi, in one of the essays, has given the list of the viharas which are destroyed, decline, and the rise of temples simultaneously. In one of his essays, he has given the list of the list of viharas when the first Chinese pilgrimage came, and then the list of viharas when the second Chinese came in AD 700, 900. And for 30 towns, Lalmani Joshi has given the statistics. How many viharas were there, how many now temples are there, and how many viharas are left. The complete destruction of viharas and rise of temples there itself. He has given that. I think these are some of the, of course, Mirakula and Shashanka and Pushpita are horrible. I think he has given one incident in Indore where the monk was tied with a bullock and asked to pull. That is the level of violence that was done. I think this is, I think I would like to summarize. I have taken more time. I want to only summarize by saying that the present emergence of Brahmanism in 2014 has four characteristics. That they are arguing that Buddha is an extension of Brahmanism. There is no much difference. Therefore, it is a avatar of Vishnu. That we see a feature of assimilation and accommodation. Several things are being accommodated and adjusted. There is a book, Ambedkar and Hegdewar, many things. There is a book on the democracy and Ambedkar and Hegdewar. There is also news that Ambedkar visited RSS office. And of course, you see open violence against the religious minority, but against the Dalit also. So all that happened in the past is now reappearing, and that is the theory of Dr. Ambedkar, which Lalmani Joshi has supported, and that is namely that Indian history is nothing but a revolution and counter-revolution. Counter-revolution was by Vedic Brahmanism, and revolution was by Buddhists. He started somewhere around BC 1500, and it comes down today. Constitution was a revolution. That is why Lalmani Joshi is praising Dr. Ambedkar. Constitution, which is based on the principle of equality, liberty, fraternity, reasons, is a revolution against the Brahmanism. But Brahmanism is again coming up in a very strong way in a counter-revolution manner. It was in 1944 in one of his lectures in Madras that Ambedkar has warned that this is the period of counter-revolution, and counter-revolutionary books are Gita and Manusmriti. I think I got a lot of insight from the editing of Lalmani Joshi. My request to you is, please, I think Lalmani Joshi is not getting enough justice from the presentation that I have seen. I think there should be, I suggested Mahesh Devdar that let one student do a PhD and bring out his contributions. There is a whole lot of freshness in that. New things, new theories. There must be a different point of view, but that whole writing of his need to be brought out and present in the present context. Thank you very much.